1 second. Welcome back. 2019. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. I got to tell you a quick story before we start the new. We got to do this right. My brother called me up from Ireland again. Last time he called me, he quit smoking. That didn't work out too well. So he decides he's going to go to the gym, give up the Guinness, and start working out for 2019. So he rings me. He says, I'm at the gym. I said, oh, good for you. He says, yes. I was asking the man about the machines I should be using to work out and to start getting in shape. I said, okay. He says, then a beautiful lass walks in. So I asked the man, he says, tell me, which machine do I need to get her attention? Young man says, there's an ATM around the corner. Oh, God bless us, can't help myself. You saw that coming, didn't you? Like a big fish. Okay, why don't we start way in the corner. Mr. Ackerley, you want to introduce yourself? Speak loud so everybody can hear you. There's a couple of seats if we need right up front here. Phil, back in here in this table. Ed, go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Ed Ackerley from Ackerley Advertising, 50 years of business here in Tucson, and I just announced that I'm jumping in, running for mayor of the city of Tucson as an independent, so if you want to support me or give me a signature or anything, I'd love to talk to you. Thank you very much for having me.
I think he's the only candidate supporting our mining industry too, so. I don't care. Somebody stand up and introduce yourself. Now that you got a mouthful of food, way back in the corner.
Wow, the tortellini went down okay, in case anybody was worried. Steve Spire with N. Weiss Associates, my first time with one of your organizational meetings, so I'm very glad to be here. So well represented, incredible. Thank you.
Newest AMIGOS member.
Yes, newest. Newest.
Yeah, within the last week or so.
Thank you.
Sally Lyons, Air Products and Chemicals.
Craig Buthard, Anchorwave, Digital Marketing and Web Design.
Lexi Sharp, Quarles and Brady. Tiffany Morris, Quarles and Brady. Marion Lalonde, Quarles and Brady.
Bob Metz, Professional Minerals Development.
Sandra Tryon with Miller Sales and Engineering.
Lindsay Garland, representing El Conquistador Tucson.
Tate Albrightson, Marine Equipment, and Merkle Crane. Kyle Humphrey, MEI Rigging and Crating.
Peter Chigueras, Thomas Promotions, Brandon Apparel, and Hard Goods.
Glenn Hoger, Carollo Engineering, Water Wastewater Engineering.
Casey Sullivan, Chromalox, Advanced Thermal Technologies.
Jim Summers, Chromalox, Electric Heating for Mining Operations.
Aaron Howard with Lana Granite Company from Chandler, Arizona.
Dick Barnwell, AMC Drilling Optimization.
Matt Niermeyer, K&G Construction.
Will Ganders, K&G Construction.
Fred Nacarati, Nino and More.
Greg Keller, Nino and More.
Leon Hunt, Coffee State Bolton Nut, and AMIGOS board member.
Jeff Landers, JL Images, on film video production company. Just moved here from Nashville. I'm joining AMIGOS.
Revolution Industrial.
Kevin Horta from Revolution Industrial.
Ian Graham, Revolution Industrial.
Taylor James, ADEQ Construction.
Sarah Dolores, Skyline Labs.
Mike Jameson, Skyline Labs.
Chris Peters, I'm a hydrogeologist with Montgomery Associates.
Kristen Misael, Hudbay, Rosemont Company. Rebecca Craig, Stark Labs, Commercial Residential Vehicle.
Colleen Edwards, Architect Labs of Tucson.
Guillermo Delay from Fabricate.
Ray Valenzuela, OVG Mining Solutions.
Steve Vasilevsky, Great Electric.
Chad Halbert, Grant.
Chad Kamali, Mountain States.
Ashley North, Mountain State.
A. Buckley, Phoenix Industrial.
Steve Weissel, Western Cash Parks.
Gene Lincoln, Eichel Engineers, provider of BPC.
Officer DFC with benefits and insurance.
Brian Chavez, Access Recruiting Solutions.
Martin Donato,
Frank Cabrera, HBM Principia Software.
Doug Payne, HBM Princia Software.
Carl Peterson, Western Technologies.
Jeffrey Martin, Kluber Lubrication Special Solutions.
Chris Pentagon, Marriott Hotels.
Teresa McKenzie with Marriott Hotels as well.
Hi, Heidi Weibar with Hexagon Mining.
Justin Johnson just opened a Tucson office for Symboticware Technology.
Matt Taft, with Rain for Rent. Eric Barnard, Rain for Rent.
Jim Johns, Rockwell Automation.
Steve Stryker, Rockwell Automation.
Kevin Gilbreth, Pioneer Equipment.
John Ramos, Field Running Systems Incorporated.
Mike Lima, Tucson Electric Power.
Justin Hank, Western Technologies.
Joe Santagata, I'm with AMIGOS Group Block.
Robert Rush, I'm with Kilo Pumps.
Mark Davis with Keto Pumps, and I'm an AMIGOS board member.
Chris Wilson with IEC Supply.
Bill Netherton with Meter Logic, Energy and Power Distribution Management. Eric Berkheimer with Arnold Machinery.
Douglas Lamford, Arizona Electric and Motor Service, low voltage, high voltage drive systems.
Roberta Suttle, Trace International.
Orlando Caballero, Trace International.
Cheyenne Tolgren with Crest Insurance, and so glad to be back.
Dan Nolan, Crest Insurance as well.
Brett Cannis, CTI Bolton Trucking, and AMIGOS board.
Reed Morano, CTI Trucking.
Chris Gibbons, CTI Trucking.
Tom Jones, CTI Trucking, and AMIGOS board member.
Robert Hernandez, Digital Visibility Marketing. Good afternoon, Larry Lucero with Tucson Electric.
Steve Christie, member, Pima County Board of Supervisors, District 4.
Lori Swanson, excuse me, design, and I work with SABC.
Christine Johnson, South 32.
Spencer Cole, South 32, the new commercial manager for the Mimosa project, taking over from John Revell. Thank you.
Robert Davidson with M3 Engineering.
Robert Wood with M3 Engineering.
Carson Richardson with the Arizona Geological Survey.
Bob Linsfeld, Granite Construction.
Stacy Glamasio with Florence Copper.
Matt Bingham with Hudbay Minerals.
Jerry Bustamante with Hudbay.
Monica Saliero, Asarco, Mexico. Marshall, South 32.
Greg Lucero, South 32. Misael Cabrera, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality.
To get everybody?
Mark Burns at Southwestern Scale.
And this young lady on camera one?
Sarah McCrary, McCrary Compliance, Safety, Training, and Consulting.
Jim Hurley, Pioneer Equipment, and representing my hobby today. Nice to meet you.
The first and most important thing I want to do is once again say thank you to Granite Construction for hosting us. They are. If you didn't pay online and you had some lunch, I'm about to pass the bucket from the back and just keep moving. That's it. Oh, you're on, yes.
Okay, well, we got a full agenda today. A couple of quick, nice to know, good to know what we should know. We're going to start with Asarco today. She left. Are you going to give us an update? Okay, come on up. And forgive me, I got to get your card again. Monica, right?
Okay, I am going to...
Here. Monica? You can come up front.
So the update for Asarco on behalf of Nancy Johannesmeyer, who is my boss. I just wanted to give an update of some of the major projects going on at Asarco. As you know, Asarco has invested $200 million in upgrading in Hayden smelter to bring the Hayden area into attainment of the new SO2 and lead air quality standards. The construction phase of the project was completed in the fourth quarter of last year, and we are now in the equipment commission phase of the project. There will then be a one-year fugitive emission study where we will demonstrate to EPA that the work we have done meets the standards. We have worked closely with ADEQ over the past few years developing the Hayden SO2 state implementation plan, and we are hoping that the EPA will approve the plan over the next few months. As some of you might know, the Ray Land Exchange is a project that has been going on over 25 years. At this point, we are waiting for issuance of the supplemental environmental impact statement and record of decision. This is an exchange of highly sensitive, biologically diverse private land for land with high mineral potential close for Ray Mine. The acting Interior Secretary is anxious to get these final documents out the door, but he also wants to be sure the documents are legally defensible. We are grateful to all of you who have supported Asarco in this process. Through letters of support and attendance of the public meetings, it is our hope that the exchange will be finalized sometime this year, but we said that maybe it's also going to take one more year. We are happy to report that the Section 404 permit and record of decision of the Ripsey Tailings Storage Facility has been issued in December. This facility will extend the Ray Mine life 50 more years. We are heading into the final design phase of the project with the intent of start construction in 2021. Finally, as most you know, Manuel Ramos in September of last year, Grupo Mexico has retired. Grupo Mexico has been working to fill this position in our organization, and we are hopeful that at the next SABC meeting, we will be able to introduce his successor. Thank you.
Stacy, you ready? Come on down.
I just brought a few photos. Hi, everyone. How are you? Good. I'm Stacy with Florence Copper. Been coming here for 5 years saying we're having another public hearing, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I just really want to say thank you so much to the Southern Arizona Business Coalition. Rick, Bill, thank you so much for your support. To Sydney from AMIGOS, all the members of both organizations, you guys are fantastic. And we really have you to thank for getting to phase 1 operations. Yes, okay. So we got our, I think it was August of 2017, that's when our EPA permit was upheld in appeals court. I think I told you guys that. That's when we started drilling on site. So got some photos of, you want me just to?
Go ahead, next one. Just tell me.
Yeah, you can just go through them. We had our drill rigs on site. We contracted with Hydro Resources for the PTF. That caused a little excitement in Florence because there's not a whole lot going on besides the prisons, but everybody wanted to know what was happening, and they couldn't believe they saw those drill rigs there. And of course, we have our sunrise shot of the drill rigs as well. If you're not familiar with the project, we are in situ copper recovery, so it's just a 24-well project. We use the in situ method to extract the copper from deep underground in the fractured bedrock. So there's our completed well field. That's our mine at Florence Copper. The next shot just shows you the well field from a different angle, but we have commenced those phase 1 operations. It's a demonstration of in situ copper recovery, a 1-year test with the option to extend to 2 years. And of course, it is our greatest desire that at the close of the PTF, the test facility, we will move into commercial operations on the project. So we broke ground also this time last year on what's called, well, look who I'm talking to, you guys know, our solvent extraction electrowinning facility. And so if you come visit us on site now, you do see that completed. Of course, we do have the pipeline, that's the next photo, that we use to transport the solutions and to transport the pregnant leach solution to the SXEW. And then it's just a few more photos just to show you what it looks like at Florence Copper. The last ones are the most recent. We've got the completed solvent extraction electrowinning plant with a small pond behind it. And of course, we have the completed well field. Again, this is all kind of small scale, and even the SXEW will not be the same building that we will use for commercial operations. So we still have a lot to do once we get to phase 2. And certainly that's when we will have many more employees on site, and we will be constructing a new SXEW facility at that time. So that's what we've been up to. We also had another good milestone for the project. I don't know if you've been following this part, but we had some challenges to our zoning. The town of Florence was challenging our right to mine on our property. Well, the judge did rule in our favor. So as we move into commercial operations, we can mine over the whole deposit as we see fit. So that's our updates. I'm happy to answer any questions about Florence Copper. We have about close to 40 on site right now. So again, small scale pilot test. As we move into commercial, we'll have 170 direct Florence Copper employees, but of course, we will contract with a drilling company, and realistically, you're looking at 245 employees on site. Yes?
When will you bring up your first copper?
That's a good question, and we are getting close. Dan Johnson, our GM, hasn't given me a firm answer on that yet, but I will certainly let everybody know we are getting close to that. So right now, it's just the wells, but we haven't started the plating process yet, but we will soon, and I will certainly communicate that to Rick and Sydney.
Thank you, my friend.
That's why Dan sends me. He doesn't want to give an answer yet, right? Okay. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, my friend. Jerry.
Well, Rick's excited about this. We'll show it in a bit. But good afternoon, everyone. And boy, exciting things at Florence Copper. Really, really exciting. So I have a few things that I'm going to share with you all today. I will start with essentially answering the question that you probably have on your mind. And the answer is no, we're not digging yet. We're working towards that. So with respect to the federal permitting process that we are 11 years and 1,000 studies into, we continue to await the final decision from the Army Corps of Engineers on Rosemont's Clean Water Act Section 404 permits. We've made progress with the Corps. We were hoping to see a decision from the Corps by the end of last year, but between the holidays and a government shutdown, that kind of put the brakes on that. But again, we're making progress with the Corps. We think that we're in a really good place, and we expect that we'll have a decision sooner than later, and we're confident that we're going to have a successful outcome. So that's progressing. We continue to also work with the U.S. Forest Service as well on finalizing our mine plan of operation. That there is an administrative process. They issued their record of decision about 1.5 years ago on Rosemont. So that's progressing as well, and we expect that they will finalize the mine plan of operation for Rosemont shortly after the Army Corps of Engineers gets over the finish line. So that's where we are with permitting. Last time we talked, I talked a little bit about about a few lawsuits that have been filed, not against us, we're the applicant, but there is there's one lawsuit that has been filed against U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who issued the biological opinion on Rosemont, and that lawsuit was filed by the Center for Biological Diversity, and there's 2 current lawsuits as well against the U.S. Forest Service, one by a handful of environmental organizations led by Save the Scenic Santa Ritas, and a second lawsuit against the Forest Service against 3 Arizona tribes. So those were filed early last year. Those are moving through the process as well. And for us, that's what we were hoping. We were hoping that if there were going to be lawsuits, you don't want them, but if they were, that they were filed sooner than later. So there's a good chance, we have reason to believe, that by this summer, closing statements will be made and the judge will issue a decision on those. So that's progressing as well. And then the third thing I wanted to share is one of the things that you're going to start seeing from us is we're going to start talking about Rosemont again. For the last 4.5 years since Hudbay acquired the project, we've presented to groups like you all and other groups as well. But for the most part, we've worked really hard to stay out of the news, kind of fly under the radar, and it has worked well for us. A lot of the energy and a lot of the debate concerning Rosemont has really, really come down. That's been good for us. It's been good for the agencies as well. It's given them the time and the space that they need to do a thorough job in the permitting process, which is what we've always wanted. But now we're beginning to prepare for what's next. And what we intend to do is start talking about Rosemont again, the project itself. Not the controversy, not permits, but the project itself. There's a lot of elements to the project that are unique. There's a lot of factors that have that cool factor that we're looking forward to talking about. But more importantly, we're gonna begin to reintroduce Rosemont. So one of the things that we did is we developed a new video, and we just finalized it this week. We haven't even rolled it out yet, so you all get to be the first to see it. Ready? Yeah, let's show it.
Rosemont Copper Project is seeking approval to operate from state and federal agencies. Input has been received from the surrounding communities and 17 government agencies as part of the environmental impact statement. Rosemont will deploy sound environmental management practices and advanced mining techniques in its operations. Located 30 miles to the southeast of Tucson, the Rosemont project sits within the historic Helvetia mining district. Water is a precious resource in Arizona. Our water management philosophy of reduce, reuse, and replace results in water consumption that will be one of the lowest in the world per pound of copper produced. We will replace 100% of the water we use, and Rosemont will be a zero discharge site. That means the water we use in processing will stay on site for recycling and reuse. By deciding for the future, Rosemont balances our operational requirements with existing environmental and recreational uses. We will do this in a safe and sustainable manner. Reclamation starts from day one. The process begins with ore being excavated from the pit. The ore is then transported for mineral recovery at the plant and then trucked off-site for further processing. Processed material that does not contain copper will be filtered and stored within the dry stack tailings facility, a proven method that significantly reduces water consumption and the project footprint. Waste rock is used to construct the dry stack facility and will ultimately encapsulate it. The remaining waste rock is stored behind a buttress near the dry stack facility in a compact footprint. This will minimize visual impacts from State Route 83 and surrounding areas and support ongoing reclamation. During operations, over 500 highly skilled full-time employees will be required. Their job is to ensure that all mining, water, and environmental management practices are conducted safely and efficiently, supporting a sustainable mining culture. At Rosemont, we value the communities in which we work. Community feedback was included when developing conservation, recreational, environmental, and cultural initiatives that will enhance our region for decades to come and provide significant local and state economic benefits. From construction to closure, productive relationships will guide us through the life cycle of the Rosemont Copper Project, balancing the opportunities and the distinctiveness of this unique site.
All right, so what do you guys think? Yeah, we're pretty excited about how that came out, but more importantly, we're really eager to successfully conclude the federal permitting process and really start to move forward and really talking about the project, talking about the benefits of the project, but really using really dynamic visual representation of what the site's going to be. It's one thing for us to talk about it. It's another thing when we can actually show them what it's going to look like. So we're looking forward to that next phase in the project. So I'll take any questions anyone has. Oh, come on, folks. There you go.
What employees are going to be operating there when it's at full capacity?
About 500 is what we expect, 500 full-time employees once we go into commercial production.
Are you guys concerned about employment when South 32 is going and Lone Star and all these things are going? Are you concerned about being able to hire that?
I tell you, that's an issue we all have. All of us as mining companies. I mean, there is a workforce issue. There's no doubt about it. Not just in our industry, but a lot of the other industries that are prevalent, in our communities. So the answer is yes. Our HR manager, Misael, that's back there, it's going to be her role to go out and find those people. But also, there's a lot that we can do as an industry to promote our industry, to encourage young people to get into our industry. JTED has their heavy equipment program out in Sahuarita schools. A program that we're supporting. So that's just a start right there. And one of the things that's really important for us as an industry is we can't expect someone else to solve our workforce problems. So it's something that all of us are concerned about and something that we all got to work towards. Yes, sir.
Maybe a dumb question, but who's your target audience for that video? Who do you want to see that?
No, that's a good question. The video is intended for the general public. And it's intended for anyone that has an interest in the project. And what we wanted to accomplish with this video is to really give a high-level overview of what the project is, what it is, where it's located, how we're going to manage water, how we're going to manage our operations, how we're going to manage reclamation. That's really what it's intended to do, and to really help people just visualize what it's going to be. That final scene at the end, that's what the site's going to look like once we're done. And the site's been completely reclaimed. And what you saw in the background were our tailings facilities after they've been completely revegetated. And the only thing that's going to be left is the pit. Everything else is going to be reclaimed. And that's what people are interested in seeing. So the audience is anyone that's interested. Yes?
Where do you plan to ship the ore?
That hasn't been determined yet. I mean, it's all about smelting capacity, and it doesn't exist here. It exists elsewhere. The question that I get, will we ever, build a smelter? And the answer is, it's not going to happen. It's hard enough to permit a mine in this place. Imagine a smelter. So, we're going to sell our copper like everyone else does, to the global market, and it's going to go wherever there is smelting capacity. Back of the room. Yes, we have Asarco. Asarco's our EPCM. Oh, don't put me on the spot. I know there's a C and there's an S. A-U. Right here.
A-U-S-E-N-C-O.
All right. Don't ask me to do math in front of you either. That's not going to work out. So it's Asarco. Other questions? Yes.
You said Rosemont is going to have the lowest rate consumption of water. What is the average?
Well, we are permitted to use up to 6,000 acre-feet of water a year. most likely we're going to use somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,500, which is about half of what conventional mines the size of Rosemont are using. You're welcome. Other questions? Any hardball questions?
Is there, in the near future, any plans for the water line and power line project to start with?
Well, that's, the answer is yes. We haven't decided yet. Everything hinges on our permits. But developing our, you know, our water and our electricity, that's huge for us. One of the best ways for us to de-risk the project is to ensure that we have a consistent and reliable supply of water and electricity. So that decision hasn't been made, but it's very likely that that'll be one of the first things that we get started on.
Is this Asarco? Is that that's not a local company. Where are they from?
They're based out of Australia. They're based out of Australia, but they'll have a local presence here once we get started.
And is there a commitment from Hudbay to use local contractors exclusively?
Well, we've made that that is a commitment that was made from the start, and that's one of those commitments. There's a lot of commitments that when Hudbay acquired the project, there was a lot of promises and commitments that that we acquired with the acquisition of Rosemont. So the answer is yes. Our intention is to source and to procure as much as we can, you know, here locally. Of course, everyone needs to be competitive, and it's not always going to be lowest bid either. I mean, we're not government. For us, one of the things that's going to be really important, especially during construction where we ramp up, is quality, quantity, and speed. So, but our intention is to source as much as we can locally. Yes, sir.
Will outbound materials be hauled both via truck and rail, or just truck?
Outbound. Outbound is what you said. It's going to be both. So we are going to truck the copper concentrate out of the site, and it will go to the Port of Tucson, and from there it's going to be placed on rail and most likely go out to one of the ports out in the Pacific to go out to the market. So both. Thank you. You're welcome. Other questions? Well, folks, thank you. Appreciate the interest. Thank you.
Okay, I've been on this project 10 years. Jerry?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would like to see some movement before I retire.
Before I retire too, buddy.
I'm already part of the Bengay Society. Give me a break. We're really privileged. Misael, step on up, my friend. Last week I had the privilege of listening to Misael's presentation, and this gentleman is the director of the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. He not only brings a presentation with him, but he's got a personality, unlike some bureaucrats that you run into. I mean, it's like a wall. So, welcome, my friend. Look forward to hearing your presentation again. There you go, Ma. I'll pull this up for you. And then
so while he pulls that up, for those of you that don't know me, don't worry about pronouncing my first name. It's hard even in Spanish. The second thing is that I'm not a lobbyist, I'm not an attorney, I'm an engineer. I went to school right here at the U of A, got a civil engineering degree in 1993. Spent 18 and a half years in engineering environmental consulting industry. Got to the point in my career where I was not only working on projects for clients, my clients included federal, local, state governments, but it also included industrial mines, aerospace, et cetera. I got to the point in my career where I was not only doing environmental projects for clients, but I was also managing the business of environmental consulting. So I had shareholders. I had a profit and loss center, and that really taught me a lot of very important lessons about customer value. During that career, I also learned about lean. So right behind me, there's a poster that says Timwood. And Timwood stands for waste. It says non-value added there, but it's actually waste, right? So there's transportation, inventory, motion, that's an excess, waiting, overprocessing, overproduction, and flat defects. And yes, I know that by memory because we apply those lessons at ADEQ. So one of the things that I like to explain to people is that I have a passion for the environment. I am unapologetic about my passion for the environment because it doesn't matter if you believe in a heavenly father or a Mother Earth or some third option. Our responsibility for the planet is actually very important. My second passion, though, is good government. You see, my parents are from a country in the Caribbean where there are no industry associations. There are no NGOs. There is just the government. There is just overreach. There's no multi-party. There's just one party and really one family that's been in charge for the last 62 years. So my first passion is the environment, but my second passion, it's a close one, is good government. And so at ADEQ, we have, over the years, done a number of things. I have a slide that just has some of the successes that we've put together over the last few years. We reduced our office footprint, sold the building, returning $1.9 million to the general fund. We also reduced our office space so that we could save the state about $5 million over a 5-year period. We had a lot of wasted, empty space that we just got rid of. We reduced vehicle emissions inspections fees in Maricopa County, and since 2014, we've saved motorists in Maricopa County $47 million. Now, you got to ask, well, what about us? Well, here's the thing. Pima County vehicle emissions inspections has been about half as much as Maricopa County for a ton of years. And in fact, I reduced rates in Maricopa County because the Auditor General came to me and said, you got to raise rates in Pima County. And I said, poo-hucky. What we need to do is drive down rates in Maricopa County so that they level off with what Pima County rates are for vehicle emissions inspections. So you still pay less. So on average, you pay about $12 for your vehicle emissions inspections, where in Maricopa County, it's about $17. But we're really, really proud of the fact that we're delivering better, faster, cheaper government. We've had lots of successes, but a lot of environmental successes too. We have a hazardous waste cleanup program called WARF, where that program had been around for over 25 years and never finished a cleanup. In the last 6 years, we've finished 6 cleanups, and we'll have 2 more this year. In our underground storage tank cleanup program, we have increased the number of cleanups per year, reduced the amount of time that it takes to do those cleanups, and we've driven down the per release cleanup cost from over $149,000 per release down to $81,000 per release. So I share that with you because that is not the ADEQ of yesteryear, right? So we're very passionate about protecting the environment, but we also are very passionate about good government. And here's what good government has to do. Good government has to understand that good government works when you balance the needs of the environment, the community, and the economy. Because what most people miss is that in poor economies and in economies that are coming out of poverty, like China, it's coming out of poverty, that's where the biggest environmental issues arise. Economies that are wealthy can do better at protecting the environment. So there's this balance that has to be achieved, and we really believe that at ADEQ. So as part of our desire to deliver good government, we are on a process to assume 404 primacy. So I have heard for many, many years the pain that applicants have associated with Clean Water Act 404 permitting. In addition to that, it was always the original congressional intent that states deliver this program. What happened, though, is that the federal government took it over initially because the states weren't equipped, and then what they did is they proceeded to write rules that would make it difficult for the states to adopt the program. So for me, I am not dogmatic about local control. I'm kind of a practical sort of person, but what I saw in 404 is that there was a lot of unnecessary delay and waste in the process, and I wanted to help. At DEQ, we have reduced our overall individual permitting timeframes. Those are our hardest, most difficult permits by over 60%. What used to take us 2 years or more is now being done regularly in 6 months or less. We also have a MyDEQ online permitting portal, and on that permitting portal you can get many permits the same day. Things that used to take months are now available the same day. And why do we do that? It's not because we don't care about the environment, it's because we believe in our heart of hearts that once we make environmental protection balanced and commonsensical and simple, that we'll stop arguing so much about stuff and just get it done. In other words, I believe that the business community is actually very good at complying with environmental needs as long as those needs are expressed in regulations that are simple and easy to understand and convenient. And so that's why we're doing that stuff. That's why we're doing the 404. What does assumption mean? It does not mean that we will regulate Section 10 waters. Section 10 waters are large bodies of the waters that are intrastate. They span more than one state. Those will never be part of our jurisdiction. We also won't have any jurisdiction on tribal lands. What it does mean is that we will determine which waters are regulated in the Clean Water Act. In other words, we will determine which waters are waters of the U.S. Now, the definition of waters of the U.S. is in flux, but if we assume the program, we would be the entity if there is any question about what was a jurisdictional water and what was not. And so we'd have primary responsibility to issue and deny dredge and fill permits. Where are we? So first we had to get statutory authority, and we did that last session. Now we're right in the middle of a robust stakeholder process. After that, what we're going to do is go through a rule design process and program development. And finally, we have to ask EPA for their approval. So in terms of next steps, we've already had lots of initial stakeholder meetings. We now have a variety of technical work groups putting down white papers on what they think the program should look like. After that, what we're going to do is establish a roadmap. We're going to do that very, very soon. And then we're going to get into the rule development. We'll go into the formal rule process, and then we will submit to EPA. There's several work groups that have already submitted their white papers. We have a work group on compensatory mitigation, on fees, on jurisdictional determinations, and significant degradation, alternative analysis, and minimization. Some outstanding work groups are cultural and historic resources. We're frankly having a challenge getting them to commit to a schedule. Endangered Species Act is on track to be presented February 28th, and the permit process itself March 21st. We also had to establish a new work group which first met a few days ago, January 15th, specific for tribal nations. They were already included in the cultural resources work group, but they wanted their own work group. They did not want to participate with other entities. They wanted their own unique work group. And as sovereign nations, we figured it was prudent to respect them enough to give them their own work group. And so they are starting to meet. We've also established an executive work group, which will submit final recommendations to the department. At the end, once we've gone through all this process and before we actually apply to EPA, we're going to come to the community, to the customer community, the people who would use the Clean Water Act 404 permitting process that we designed. And we're going to ask you, is it worth it to you for the state to have it? Now, here's why. Here's why we're going to do that. Because every value proposition has a proposed value and then a potential cost, right? So the value proposition that we are putting together is increased speed, better customer service, increased certainty, decreased life cycle costs, and I'll explain that in a moment, and compliance assistance. In other words, before you get sued, we've probably done an inspection and told you what you needed to fix. Does that make sense? Right? So, but there's a potential cost. And I've talked to a lot of attorneys on this, and there's a lot of attorneys really, really afraid of losing the federal shield against litigation, in particular with respect to the Endangered Species Act. There's going to be an increased permitting cost. Right now, the Corps charges, I think, like $25. We will be charging more than that because we are not on the general fund as an agency. All of our revenues come through fees. So for us to have a program, we're going to need to charge fees. But here's our commitment, is that if you pay us permitting fees, we believe that your life cycle costs are going to be much, much lower. Because when it takes you 6, 7, 10 years to get a permit, that is very, very difficult to keep control of cost. Now, let me talk about permitting. At DEQ, we've accelerated our permitting a lot, and yet many permits still get stuck in the appeals process. Right? And so let me say this about appeals. I believe in my heart of hearts in citizens' right to appeal government decisions. I would not have that any other way. And the process needs to move faster. So I have heard, now this is not legislation that the governor or DEQ is promoting, but I have heard that there are some people considering appeals reform. And so here's what I would say about that. I believe that citizens should have a right to appeal government decisions. And at the same time, there's got to be a way to do it faster, right? At the end, if anybody have questions about that, let me know. I also want to cover one other topic, and this is not one that maybe folks were expecting to hear about today, but actually impacts everyone in southern Arizona. There is this pipeline called the International Outfall Interceptor. How many people have heard of this pipeline? Raise a hand. Okay, about 30 or 40%. What happens is that there's this pipeline that brings wastewater from Nogales, Mexico. That wastewater crosses the border into Nogales, Arizona, flows from Nogales, Arizona, join that pipeline, and then that pipeline runs 9 miles north to Rio Rico, where there's a treatment plant, and that treatment plant treats the wastewater and then discharges water, because it stops being wastewater once you've treated it, discharges water into the Santa Cruz River. And I want to talk a little bit about that because it's a lot of water. It's 12 million gallons per day, roughly 13,000 acre feet per year. Remember that number, 13,000 acre feet per year. Here's what that adds up to. So this is the Santa Cruz Active Management Area water budget, right? So does everybody know what an active management area is? Okay, an active management area is an area where you have to manage your groundwater actively. And if you don't, you'll run out. That's what an active management area is, right? Santa Cruz County and Pima County are both in active management areas, right? And so what occurs is that in the Santa Cruz active management area, that's the demand, and it relies on this supply. The thing to remember is that that water that is discharged from the water treatment plant into the Santa Cruz River accounts for about 38% of safe yield of groundwater in Santa Cruz County. Okay? Now, for those of you that don't live in Santa Cruz County, here's the other thing. Groundwater as well as surface water flows north. And so the Tucson AMA, represented by this, so here's the Santa Cruz AMA, here's the Tucson AMA, and again, this is groundwater we're talking about. It receives about 15,000 acre feet per year of underflow from Santa Cruz County. So water that's discharged from that treatment plant, so again, starts as wastewater in Mexico, crosses the border, then gets treated, then is discharged into the Santa Cruz River. That water then flows and infiltrates into the groundwater. That groundwater in Santa Cruz County then feeds Tucson groundwater. Everybody following that connection, right? And here's why it's important. If we were to lose that water, not only would our groundwater be depleted, we would also see perennial loss. So surface water users in the area would be impacted. So waters that look like this would look like that. And here's why I'm talking about this. As a country, we actually have no right to that water. International treaty says today that Mexico gets to keep that water whenever they want. Does that make sense? So we have no certainty. So it's a lot of water. It's really important for our groundwater resources, and we have no certainty. Okay? Now, we're aided by the fact that it'd be very difficult for Nogales, Mexico to build their own treatment facilities. So that helps. Okay, so why am I talking about this? Is that pipeline is actually very old. It's over 50 years old, and every once in a while, there's a breach. In 2017, there was a breach. 600,000 gallons per day for 8 days of raw sewage went into the Nogales Wash and then into the Santa Cruz River, and we had E. coli hits all the way towards Amado, just south of the Tucson watershed. And so what happens is that the local fresh produce people in there were getting calls from Boston because the E. coli hits were all over the news and this raw sewage was in the news, and they were getting calls from Boston asking them, is your produce safe? Right? So there's an economic impact. So the water's really, really important. There's an economic impact. And then there's raw sewage in our rivers, which is not a good thing. So here's the opportunity, and here's why I'm trying to socialize the idea. The International Boundary Water Commission has $21 million today to repair that pipeline. They also have 100% plans and specs ready to go to repair that pipeline over a 9-mile length, including new manholes and resetting of the alignment of the pipe where it happens to be in a bad location. Okay, but they're asking for a 22% match, right? So they don't care. They don't care. Initially, they were asking the municipality of Nogales, Arizona. Both Nogales and the state think that that's unfair because Nogales, Arizona is only about 8% of the wastewater that goes into that pipeline. So let me talk a little bit about what we've done. Is we said, okay, International Boundary Water Commission, if you happen to have, if you happen to want to match, and by the way, these infrastructure projects from the federal level often require a local match. And so here's what we told them. We said, if you want to match, we'd like you to renegotiate the treaty with Mexico so that we can add some certainty to that water. You remember how I said that there was no international treaty giving us rights to that water? And they said, we think we could do that. We can't guarantee it because it's an international treaty, but we think we'd be willing to do that. So then I went to the folks that I know in Mexico. So I have relationships as part of the Arizona-Mexico Commission with counterparts in Mexico, and I asked them, look, if we're going to spend tens of millions of dollars repairing a pipeline that's carrying a lot of your wastewater, is that a good reason to renegotiate a treaty? And he said, yes. That's a very good reason. And he said that although it would take some time, he thought that our chances were actually pretty good to adding some permanence to that water. So here's what we've done. $21 million from IDBWC. The city of Nogales has committed verbally to about 8%, which is about $2.1 million. The Freeport-McMoran Foundation has contributed $1 million over a 3-year period. US EPA says that they'll put in $1 million. There's a state fund specific to the Santa Cruz Active Management Area, which will put in $200,000. And we're left with the gap of about $1.57 million so that we can make this deal work. Now, why am I trying to do this, right? Why am I so interested in getting the match done and getting this over the hurdle? One is because the International Boundary Water Commission has a long border. It's a long border, right, with Mexico. And there's other problems, right? So in Coronado, what's happening is down in Tijuana, there's discharges going into the ocean of raw sewage. Those discharges are then working their way to beaches in San Diego and Coronado. And so the International Boundary Water Commission has $21 million today, but those monies could very easily get reassigned. Here's the other thing. There's 4 naval bases in that area. And California has over 10% of Congress. Right? So before that money goes away, what I'm trying to do is talk and socialize the idea of local, a local match coming from wherever it comes from, so that we can start this project, repair that pipeline, and hopefully not have any more E. coli discharges. So that's my presentation. I talked about a lot of stuff. I'm open to as many questions as we have time for. Yes?
I realize it goes to the treatment center and gets discharged automatically to the Santa Cruz. Can they negotiate with buyers of that water to go elsewhere besides the Santa Cruz?
So it's possible, but that would not, the local community wouldn't favor that. But from a legal perspective, that's possible. In general, now water law is very, very complex, and I am not an expert on water law. But here's what I know, is that in the state of Arizona, unless someone already else has the right to that water, the person that treats the water gets to keep it. Now, right now, the federal government that runs that treatment plant isn't keeping the water. But those water rights issues get very, very complex because there's downstream users of groundwater that do have rights. And so that could get pretty complex pretty quick. But there is an opportunity there to value that water and then sell credits or then push that water somewhere else. That is an opportunity, although that wouldn't be favored by the local community. Because if they take that water out of the river and you do the next click, it'll go dry.
Go ahead. Actually, I have 3 quick questions. One, is there a revenue stream off of that water? Do we charge to process it?
So the city of Nogales pays rates, Rio Rico pays rates, and then the country of Mexico pay rates. They all pay rates. What the International Boundary Water Commission says is that they run that treatment plant at a loss because the rates that we have with Mexico are very, very low because after all, we keep the water once it's cleaned.
The other 2 are with 404 moving over to Arizona. Is it going to affect Rosemont in the process they're going through? And then last one is on the
So let me answer the Rosemont question. The Clean Water Act 404 decision from the Corps for Rosemont is imminent. All indications say that decision is imminent. We believe that issue will be settled far before we are able to assume the program.
Okay, and are the appeals, if there is an appeal once Arizona takes over, is it going to stay in Arizona courts? Or will it go to federal court?
If it's an Arizona permit, the appeal would be in an Arizona court, yes.
When you talk about the loss of the federal shield, under the current, if, say, the Center of Biological Diversity wants to sue the 404 after they issue a permit, the federal government, the Attorney General's office handles those appeals for the Corps of Engineers. Is that correct? Or somebody in the federal government represents the Corps.
That's correct.
You now get the permit responsibility, so they have to sue the agency.
Right.
Who is responsible for paying the fees for your defense of your permit?
So that's why we have a subcommittee to look at those very kinds of issues. In the today, so we get our permits appealed all the time. Florence Copper was, that permit got appealed twice, right? So what occurs is that we pay the Attorney General, ADEQ pays the Attorney General, and then they help us defend the permit. So we defend the permit together. And what we do is we scurry about and find money wherever we have it to pay those legal fees. That's how we do it today.
All right, but you say the loss of the federal shield. Exactly what are you referring to then?
So what happens is that there's some attorneys that believe that, especially with respect to Endangered Species Act, that there are certain processes that the federal government, because remember what I said earlier is that Congress always intended for states to deploy this program. It's actually in the Clean Water Act. But then the federal bureaucracies went forth and wrote rules to make it easy for themselves and hard for the states to assume the programs. It's really, really interesting, right? It's like they forgot the 10th Amendment. What occurs is that they've got certain rules built in that give certain consultation protections between the Corps and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And there's certain attorneys that believe that that federal-to-federal consultation would be a stronger defense against lawsuit than a state to federal consultation, specifically to the Endangered Species Act.
All right, you issue, I don't mean to prolong this, but you issue a 404 permit 5 years down the road. Who has the ultimate authority over that permit?
So the way it would work is very similar to the way we do air quality permits today. So the way we do air quality permits today, when it's a big individual complex permit, is we have the authority, but there's EPA review. In the case of the Corps and EPA, it works similarly but a little different. EPA has the opportunity to object, and then you have the Corps arguing with EPA if there's a difference of opinion as to whether or not they issue that permit. What I tell folks is that we work with EPA all the time, and because we're local and we understand our environment and we know firsthand, front line, what's happening in Arizona, it's really easy for us to negotiate on other permitting programs with EPA. So in our Title V permits, which are complex permits, we're issuing those permits now in 6 months or less on a routine basis, and we're doing it with EPA review.
Which other states have gone through this process, and how has their experience matched with our experience today?
So Michigan and New Jersey currently have assumption of the Clean Water Act 404 permit. They say that most of the time it works really, really well and that their customers are happy. On big controversial permits, of course, like anything, they say it gets complex and it gets tedious. It's important to...
I said, but it didn't do that anyways.
That's correct. And my assumption is that if it does controversial, large, complex permits at the state level, in my view, are still going to be faster and more certain because we have local knowledge and local understanding. We're also, by the nature of how we exist, we have to be more responsive. I've heard stories of people calling the Corps to find out where their permit is, only to find out that the permit engineer was on vacation for 3 weeks and nobody else could give them an update as to where that permit was. That simply wouldn't happen at ADEQ, right? Because we have boards that track every single permit. And so even if that permit engineer happens not to be there, somebody could tell you what part of the process your permit is in, right?
Yeah, do you anticipate a state, and this is kind of rhetorical, a state-specific WOTUS definition? And what sort of formatting is that going to take? And I guess the third part of that would be, is there going to be, no pun intended, a flowback to existing AZIPTs?
Great question. Let me describe a little bit about what's happened with the Clean Water Act and the WOTUS definition in Arizona over the course of the last 20 or 30 years. In the state of Arizona, we have very little regulatory authority over surface water. So waters of the U.S., it's a surface water sort of issue. And so what the department has done over the last 30 years is stretched the definition of waters of the U.S., stretched it to cover all kinds of things, right? And that's been possible because of the ambiguity associated with the definition. By the way, I want to do something fun, right? I want to do something fun. Does anyone ever wonder why we don't argue about air of the U.S.? Why is there no argument about that? See, the attorney's in the room. Why is there no argument about air of the U.S.? See, it's because the Clean Air Act is constructed differently. The Clean Air Act has thresholds below which you're not regulated. Does that make sense? So in the Clean Air Act, you have to pollute a certain amount before the regulation kicks in. The Clean Water Act is different. Here's what the Clean Water Act does. It says that we are going to protect and improve the chemical, physical, and biological characteristics of waters of the U.S. And then it talks about navigable waters a few times, but then it doesn't define it further. So what happens is that the Clean Water Act at its essence is definitional. There's no threshold trigger. Do you understand? And if you think about all other environmental laws, there's usually a threshold below which you're not regulated. The Clean Water Act doesn't have that. Therefore, we've had 30 years worth of litigation and 2 Supreme Court courses, trying to clarify. And there's, significant nexus versus relatively permanent waters and all of that stuff. So first of all, on the current federal definition of waters of the U.S., I support the pre-proposed definition, because here's what the pre-proposed definition does. It adds clarity. And it says, here's what's a water of the U.S. and here's what's not. And what they did, I'll be frank, is they actually got feedback from lots of states, including Arizona, that said, look, there's some things we're just not arguing about. Nobody's arguing about perennials. Nobody's arguing about the Colorado River. Nobody's arguing about even intermittent streams that have relatively permanent flow. What we're arguing about is dry washes that only run as a function of a storm event. So why don't you just define it such that all the stuff we're not arguing about is a water of the U.S. and then exclude the other stuff. And here's what we said. In Arizona, because we're a desert, because water's so precious, we may need to augment. We may need to do something extra, because a narrow definition like that actually excludes 90% of our waterways. So a narrow federal definition excludes about 90% of all of our washes and potential streams. So what that does is it creates a gap. But here's what I'm happy to report. Just because there's a narrow federal definition that makes sense doesn't mean that the state of Arizona can't do a little more. So there is a letter written to EPA from our governor, and that letter literally says that we welcome the opportunity to deal with our waters our way in the state. Does that make sense? So we support a narrow federal definition. We also acknowledge that that might leave a gap because we're in the desert and water's precious. And so we may need to have some sort of streamlined, efficient state program that helps cover the gap. Did that answer your question, sir?
In part, but I think the rest of the question is it's going to have to lay out over the next several years. Is this? I mean, WOTUS is so critical to how we operate with AZIPTEs. And we're going through right now a multi-sector review that's finalizing, God willing, this year. DMG was just finalized. But still we have this WOTUS definition that's up in the air without any real underline or, in fact, if anything, it's italicized. And we're just in the first inning of a 9-inning game, right? Because we're at pre-proposal, so they're going to propose it. After it's proposed and finalized, it'll go to litigation. There's going to be some court cases. But fundamentally, the reason why there's all this angst and litigation is because of the construct of the Clean Water Act itself. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Misael,
Yes.
How are you educating the masses in regard to the things that you covered today? Like important topics and issues, how are we educating the different generations and the different communities of this impacts? How is the mass getting the information we follow?
So we have pretty robust outreach activity. One is we have a redesigned website, and our website, by the way, has this new feature called My Community. In My Community, you could find your county and your zip code and find every environmental issue that's around you. because we don't think that good government hides information. We think good government is transparent, right? So online is one way. The other way is we have lots of outreach events. In fact, on the WOTUS definition, we're already having we're scheduling 3 meetings, one in Flagstaff, one in Phoenix, one in Tucson, to hear from the public on their views on the pre-proposal of the WOTUS definition. Now, unapologetically, we support a narrow federal definition, but what that feedback will tell us is what we might need to do as a state to cover the gap that new definition may leave. We also have community liaisons. So we have 5 or 6 people located all across rural Arizona that do outreach events, that talk to our customers, that share information. And then there are several reports that we issue as well. So those are the efforts that we have. We also have a tribal liaison, someone specifically assigned for helping us communicate and outreach with the tribes. And I get around quite a bit, but maybe not as much as you'd like me to. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, sure. I mean, I'm just getting back in the mix of things, but what I was thinking is sometimes some of the money that you're needing to raise and things like that, you get a lot of younger generations together and we can raise money like no other. And so you're saying there's this gap of different things that we need money and we don't care where it's coming from. A lot of people, my generation and younger, they'll work for free. And they'll raise money for things that are important to them because they're moved by that. So I guess I was just curious, how do things like this get to the masses of the different generations who are moved by different things? They're not always moved by the way businesses are moved. They're moved because they want to do something right and do something for the community or because it feels good. So I was just curious, how does that get out to all that?
You know, we could probably do a lot better, and I'd love to hear your ideas, because we can probably do a lot better.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay.
Great job. Great job. Well, as you can tell, there's a lot of law here. We do have the University of Arizona. John Lacey has, what do they call it, Matt? What's his education, law school? Tell us about the mining law school. You're good at it.
Sure.
He's an attorney. You should know.
John Lacey and Mary Poulton have formed a program that's basically online graduate degrees, cross studies between lawyers and geologists and other kind of technical degrees. And it's called the U of A Mineral Policy Center, I believe. But it's all online, and I actually teach a course in there, and there are professionals signing up, working professionals all across the world actually, that sign up and take courses, and technical folks learn more about the law, and lawyers learn more about the technology issues. So it's a pretty good program. John Lacey, I think everyone probably knows him, but he's a legend in mining law, so it's a great program.
Just wanted to get that out there. I think we're about ready to close it down. Couple of quick points here, real quick. Carson, I'm going to have you back next mining meeting. Carson with AGS and the economic information stuff. 2019 is the miracle of mining. SABC is launching a program this year to where we're going to be producing videos and really trying to get the outreach that you're talking about, and trying to get the community educated on the importance of our industry. But we're always talking about the mining as the project. Our goal is to talk about the benefits. I don't know how many people in here have a pacemaker, but I got artificial knees. How many people are walking around, look at our glasses, our hearing aids, okay, our medicines, so electric cars, yeah. So the Miracles of Mining program is going to be an ongoing event, and we are going to start at the 2019 Mining Day at the Capitol, March 6th from 11 to 2 p.m. And I would recommend that you contact the Arizona Mining Association. I believe it's azmining.org. And they're putting together the program. We will be there. We'll be doing interviews and talking to people about the miracles of mining. And then our goal is September of 2015 to have our 6th annual mining appreciation event. The last event that we had over 600 people. and it was about women in mining. And so our industry has really been one of the leading industries of helping promote women in our industry. And we can do better at everything we do. You know, we keep talking about we're trying to get everything done right away. Success comes moving the needle a little bit at a time each and every day. With that, I'll turn it over to Cindy. One quick announcement, she's going to play golf.
Oh, that's in May.
Oh.
May 23rd, mark it down for the golf tournament, this Spring Copper Classic. But we are excited that those of you that have Phoenix offices, be sure go on our website, because on February 28th we're having a face-to-face luncheon at Phoenix Country Club. It's members only, so if you're not a member, join, and then you can come. And Dan Johnson will be our keynote speaker, and so you can ask him that question about production. And I just learned this week that Resolution Copper has asked to also be able to present at that meeting, so we'll have both Dan Johnson and Resolution, and we will have Hudbay Rosemont presenting as well. So it's going to be an event that the folks in your Phoenix offices will not want to miss. February 28th, click on miningamigos.com to register, and that is my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.